So, I'm still in the hospital. I am now stabilized from my drug overdose, and I've decided that I have to tell my girlfriend Christy that I've been cheating on her with Julie, who lives in the drug house. Julie was actually like a part of our little friend group. Like back in the late 80s, early 90s on the peninsula, we had this like pretty tight, incestuous group of queers and misfits, and we all hung out. And I was fairly popular among them because mostly I had a car, and I was kind of cute. Um, I don't think I was charming because I've always been really awkward, but so at some point, and there's a lot that I don't recall from that time in my life. Like I don't know how long I was hanging out in the drug house in San Francisco. I don't know how long Julie and I were messing around, but you know, I was in the emergency room. I'm in the room. I'm stabilized, and I've decided I need to like unburden my guilty conscience and tell Christy that I've been cheating on her with Julie. So she comes in, and I'm fairly certain that Julie was there at the emergency room too. So that was a little bit awkward, I'm sure. Um, and the boy who had driven my car and all of us back up to the city had decided to take my car while I was almost dying in the emergency room to go see his boyfriend because his boyfriend at the time lived in the city. But the boy driving my car was a little bit drunk, and he ended up crashing my car while I was in the emergency room. And then a few hours later came back when I was stabilized. And I had just told Christy, my girlfriend, that I had been cheating on her with Julie. And so, you know, she had left the room, and the doctor was like, okay, we need to really like keep it calm, keep you like chill, everything needs to be mellow. Anyways, I'm sure the doctor did not use those words, but the boy driving my car came back, and he was like, can I go in and see her? And the doctor was like, yeah, but make sure that you like keep it mellow. And he comes in and he's like, oh my God, like I just went out to look at your car and like somebody crashed into your car. And I like, I grew up in a car family. My dad was a Volkswagen guy. We never had brand new cars, but we had nice cars because my dad knew, he knew how to find really nice used cars. And, I always had Volkswagens. My first two cars were Volkswagen Scirocco's. And this one was my second Volkswagen Scirocco, which was like, I can't remember if it was an 80 or 81 Scirocco S with Recaro racing seats and an Alpine stereo. And I coveted that car because it was badass. It was a 5-speed manual transmission, and it was like a little rocket, and it was so fun to drive, and I just loved that car, and I worked so hard to like save money to buy it. And so when he told me that somebody crashed into my car, it I completely like lost it. And then the the nurses or whoever was in there was like, okay, you need to leave now. So I later found out that he actually took my car to go see his boyfriend and crashed it at some point while he was driving it. And then, you know, um, 2 weeks later, so I get picked up by my parents, go home, am like coming off all of these drugs, and make a full recovery because somehow like, you know, I could smoke, I could not smoke, I could drink, I could not drink, I could, I never, after that experience, I never did drugs again. Like I was just like done. Um and it wasn't like, oh, scared straight. It was just like, yeah, I did that, and I'm not interested anymore. So, I realized like I'm really fucking lucky because I don't think a lot of people get to say like I did a ton of crystal meth, or, I did heroin, um, and, walk away just being like, yeah, whatever, I did that for that time. But anyways, so after I told Christy that I had been cheating with Julie, I had gone home and I was kind of like out of it because my body was like trying to recover. And so I was not hanging out, and I wasn't, and my parents, because I wasn't 18 yet, they kind of kept me on lockdown because my parents were like, okay, you like super fucked up, and now we are actually responsible for you. So you are, you're not going to be just freewheeling like you have been. So I was kind of on lockdown, and then a few weeks later, I managed to like, get out on my own again. I don't know, probably because I had to go to work or some shit like that. But I ended up finding out because I was like went to my girlfriend's house to be like, hey, I'm back, and found out somehow this is, I mean, we had pagers, I guess. We didn't have cell phones, and we didn't like, I don't know how I found this out, but I found out that Christy was now cheating on me with Julie, the girl that I had been cheating on Christy with. So I found out through the grapevine that Christy was actually at the drug house with Julie, and I was like, oh no. So I drove up to the city in my car that was now had this big old like gash on, I think, the front right um, side of the car. And I made a pit stop at a place called Cafe San Marcos, which in the Castro used to be a lesbian bar, and I had a fake ID. So I stopped there, had a rolling rock, um, and then was making my way over to the drug house to retrieve my girlfriend Christy, because I was like, she can't be there. Like, this is terrible. And also, like, of course, I was like, how dare she cheat on me? Um, and as I was driving over there, I was driving up. So the Castro turns into Divisadero, and I'm driving. There's this part where it goes up, and the people coming in oncoming traffic, there's an intersection there where there's no left turn, because when you're coming up that hill, you can't see who's coming and they can't see who's coming. So for obvious reasons, there's a no left turn there. And it happens to be right by what was Davis Medical, which is where a couple weeks before I was in the emergency room overdosing. So I am probably listening to the Cocteau Twins, um, or some Depeche Mode, or maybe the Smiths. Probably a mixtape that Christy had actually made me. But I'm driving up, and some dude coming in the opposite direction makes an illegal left, and I T-bone him. And of course, there were no seatbelt laws, and I didn't have my seatbelt on, and I was probably driving really fast. And um, I knocked the rearview mirror off with my forehead, um, which comes in to the story in a little bit. So the guy who made the illegal left turn was drunk. And um, when I came to a stop, and like I looked down, and like my head, I had a huge egg on my forehead, and it was like bleeding. And I looked down, and there's my rearview mirror, and I grab it, and I get out of the car, and I go over to this guy, and I can tell that he's like really drunk, and I just like lose my shit and start like smacking him with my rearview mirror. The cops show up, and they're like, you know, stop beating this man with your rearview mirror. um, and they were actually really nice, and they were like, okay, clearly you have witnesses. What you're going to do is you're going to write down and get his confession, basically, and he's going to take full responsibility for this, so that when it comes time and there's an agreement around what your car is worth, because my car was totaled at this point. Like, it was completely totaled. And so the cops like witnessed this confession from this guy. Anyways, I ended up getting, all the money from him. But when we're sitting there, my car's totaled. And the cops are like, okay, listen, you have three options. We can take you to the police station, which I was like, no, because I had one beer. But I was like, no, I'm not going to the police station. And then they said, well, we can take you to the hospital here, right here, because you got quite a crack on your forehead. And I was like, I was just there. No. And they said, well, then if you want to get your stuff out of the car, we can take you to a friend's house. If you have somebody in the city, we can take you to their house. So I was like, yes. So I had the cops, mind you, because I had been kind of living out of my car. I had tons of clothes in my car. I had a VCR in my trunk. Like, I had all this shit in my car. And the cops loaded it all into the trunk of their car. I had the police take me to the biggest crystal meth dealer's house in San Francisco. So I roll up. I've got my leather jacket on. Oh, and in my glove box, because this was how I traveled, I had a giant buck knife, which, if you know anything about hunting knives, this is a huge fucking knife. And so I put it on the inside pocket of my leather jacket. And so we roll up, two police cars roll up in front of the biggest crystal meth dealer's flat in San Francisco. And I get out and I go up and I like knock on the door. I like, how am I still alive? I'm not exactly sure, but so they open the door and they're like, what the, like, what the fuck are you doing here? Like, basically, like, how could you bring the cops here? Are you out of your fucking mind? Which obviously I was. So they were like, get rid of the cops. So I was just kind of like, oh, you can just unload my stuff, here on the sidewalk. So all my shit's on the sidewalk. And they leave. And then one of the people comes out. And of course, they were like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And so I was like, is Julie here? And yeah, my girlfriend Christy was in Julie's room, and they were not dressed and probably doing drugs, whatever. So I was like, okay, well, can you at least let me use your phone so I can call my parents, so my parents can come pick me up, because my car is totaled. I have no other way of getting anywhere. And so I call my parents, and my parents are like, are you fucking kidding me? So they were like, okay, we'll come get you. Because again, still, I am not 18 years old yet. So my parents are on their way, and I'm just like sitting on the sidewalk with all my shit waiting for my parents, and thinking about like my girlfriend being in this flat with Julie. And then I look up and I see Julie's car. Julie drove a red Hyundai, a total piece of shit Hyundai, and it was parked like right there. And something just like flicked in my brain, like I've completely lost it. And I was wearing steel-toed Doc Marten boots, and I went to Julie's car and I kicked it, and it left this huge dent, and I was like, yes. And then I took a couple steps and I kicked it again. Well, I went around the entire car just like kicking the shit out of her car. So there were these huge dents in her car. And then I remembered I had a buck knife in my leather jacket pocket, and I was like, oh, this would come in handy. And so I took it and I carved "fuck you" in the hood of Julie's red Hyundai with my buck knife. And then at some point, my parents showed up, and Oh, they were so mad. They were so fucking mad at me, and understandably. And I'm sitting in the back seat of the car, and like, mind you, like, I grew up in a household where we did not have a lot of money. Um, you know, my dad worked in a parts department for a Volkswagen dealership, so, and my mom didn't work, so, um, which is also why I started working when I was 12 years old. But I also didn't have any savings, and I knew that, you know, I was going to have to pay for what I had done to Julie's car. So I said, I'm going to need to borrow some money. And my parents were like, what? And I told them what I did. Oh, my poor parents. But the next day I called Julie. Um, and she was like, what do you want? And I said, have you seen your car yet? And she was like, what the fuck, bitch? What'd you do to what? And I was like, just go look at your car. So I hear her, she drops the phone, and I hear the front door open. I hear her go down her stairs. Fucking bitch! You fucking bitch! I could just hear her. She was just like losing it. And then up the stairs. I'm gonna fucking kill you, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, listen, um, because my dad was in the car business. So, I was like, take it to Cook's Auto Body because my dad had a connection there. Get an estimate and I will pay for it. And so she did that. And this fucking garbage piece of shit Hyundai ended up, that outburst ended up costing me $3,500 that took me years to pay back. My parents had to put it on their American Express credit line. And bit by bit, I ended up paying it back.